Hello everyone. Today we'll start our PBL session, but before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Stephanie and I am the chairperson for today's PBL. Could you guys introduce yourself first? Hello, my
Hello,
name
my
is.
name is Corey Amanda.
Hi, I'm Sophia Jelina.
Hi, my name is Nina Vivian.
Hi, my name is Nurifa Hazira Intiadarani.
Hello, my name is Natalie Joseph.
And hi, my name is Deidre Allegra.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. For today's session, we will discuss about the trigger which has been given for us last week. So our trigger is Australia deadly bushfire started in July 2019 and have continued ever since. These were made worse by persistent heat and drought as well as climate change. Nearly 50 nationally threatened animal and plant species are believed to have at least 80% of the area in which they live affected by bushfire. A federal environment department analysis has found there are among 331 threatened and migratory species that are believed to have had more than 10% of where they live in burned areas across all 6 states. The list included 272 species of plants, 16 mammals, 14 frogs, 9 birds, 7 reptiles, 4 insects, 4 fish, and 1 spider. So, before we start with our discussion, do you have any terms that you find difficult to understand?
Okay, me. I have this one terms that I find it difficult to understand, which is the deadly bushfires. Can anyone explain?
The meaning of deadly bushfires is devastating bushfires that can wreak havoc on nature, economies, and peoples.
I also have one term that I didn't understand, which is persistent. Could you please explain?
Persistent is defined as something that lasts for a long time.
Okay,
Thank
I'm
you.
kind of confused with the term drought as we can find in the second sentence of the trigger. Can someone explain the meaning of the term?
Drought is a prolonged period of abnormally low rainfall, which can lead to shortage of water.
I also have a term that I don't understand, which is threatened species.
The definition of threatened species is a plant, animal, or other living organism that may become in danger of extinction if current trends continue.
The next species that I want to be explained to is migratory species.
Migratory species is defined as species that move from one habitat to another during different times of the year, as they cannot live in the same environment all year round due to seasonal limitation in factors such as food, sunlight, and temperature.
I think the last term that I want to ask is reptile. Does anyone know the meaning for that term?
Well, reptiles is a group of cold-blooded animals which have skins covered with small hard plates called scales and lay eggs.
Okay, that's plenty of terms that we have discovered. So thank you for asking all the terms and thank you for answering the terms. So now that you understand all the terms, we will proceed to discuss our point of view for this trigger. So who want to share the first fact and idea for this trigger?
can I go first, Stephanie?
Okay.
My first fact is Australia's deadly bushfires started in July 2019 and have continued ever since. And behind that fact, the idea is Australian bushfire season start anytime from June onwards and applies mainly to southern and eastern Australia.
So what causes the bushfires in Australia?
Okay, let me answer it. So every state and territory in Australia has experienced fires, especially on summers. As we all know, it's hotter and warmer during that season. But in 2019, they are a lot worse than normal as the climate change takes place. Climate change is bringing longer and more frequent period of extreme heat and makes vegetation drier and more likely to burn. So factors such as high temperature, strong wind, and dry forests have combined to create more powerful fires. Okay, in fact, in mid-December 2019, the nation saw the hottest day in history as the average temperature was 41.9 degrees Celsius, which is very, very hot weather. Even we couldn't stand the heat, right? So for the impact, there have even been blazes in wetlands and rainforests that have not contended with this threat before. This shows that climate change has really affected the ecosystem, and that is most probably the cause of the bushfires. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the point. And that was such an insightful point that you guys have there. So, do you guys have any adds on? No? Okay, so Nina, do you have any point for the second facts and idea?
Okay. The second fact is the bushfires in Australia were made worse by persistent heat and drought as well as climate change. So the idea behind this is, in fact, in summer 2019, Australia has the second hottest summer on record, with the temperature being 1.88 degrees Celsius above average. And across almost the entire country, um, especially in southeastern and southwestern Australia, the rainfall has declined. And I think that has caused the bushfires being extremely serious and dangerous as well. So that's all.
Okay. So Ifa,
I'm so sorry.
okay. So Ifa, do you have any learning myths that you want to ask?
Oh, I have a question here. What are the tips to survive the climate change in Australia?
Okay, such a good question. So, in my opinion, they should prepare a bushfire survival plan to ensure their safety. As we know, bushfire condition can change rapidly, so it is advisable to not stick to only a plan. So they have to create plan A, B, C, and D if needed. And the second one, we have to understand the bushfire danger ratings. They have to be familiar with the different level of bushfire alerts so that they can determine whether to trigger their bushfire survival plan as I stated earlier. And the third one is identify neighborhood safer places, which is NSP. There are refuges of last resort in the survival plan. So they should consult the local fire authority for a list of neighborhood safer places in the area. And lastly, from me, they should clean up outside the outside. Dry foliage such as fallen leaves are cleared away from roof and gutters. trees that are overhanging buildings should be cut back where permitted so that the fire didn't spread out. I think that's all for my point.
Other than what Stephanie already stated, we can help firefighters with water supply. Swimming pools, water tanks, and dams may serve as a vital water supply for firefighters. We can display static water supply SWS sign at our property entrance if we have bulk water storage. Next, we need to ensure that our building code meet the bushfire zone construction requirements. The main purpose of building codes is to protect public health, safety, and general welfare, as they may relate to the construction and occupancy of buildings and structures. Besides that, we need to make sure that our property is amber safe. Amber can travel kilometers ahead of fire front and are the leading cause of house fires during bushfire. Simple measures such as installing bushfires prone area compliant mesh screens over windows, doors, and other openings can improve the resistance of a property to amber attack. The safe The safest option in a bushfire is to leave early. Do not wait until it is too late. We should strongly consider leaving early, especially if we are not bushfire prepared. Our property is not considered for a bushfire, or a catastrophic fire danger rating has been issued. Well, obviously, preparation is vital. Choosing to stay and defend may place us at serious risk. Not all properties can be defended. If we choose to stay, make sure we are well prepared and physically and emotionally capable of defending our property. If in doubt, we should leave early. That's all.
Wow, there's a lot of tips to survive the climate change in Australia. And I think that's such a great idea. So we will move to the third fact. And now who's going to state the third fact and idea for this trigger?
May I tell you guys about the third fact? The next fact is that at least 80% of the area where nearly 50 nationally threatened animal and plant species live were affected by the bushfire. Hence, from this fact, we can extract the idea that the Australia's bushfires have burned more than half of the non-habitat of 100 threatened plants and animals. For example, for the animal example is koala, kangaroos, glossy-backed cockatoo, and for the plant species examples are the native winter cress of Australia, the Ormu bottle tree, and tree nettle. This includes 32 critically endangered species.
Okay, for this endangered species, what is the emergency plan during the bushfire? Does anyone have any idea?
Okay, so for the emergency plan for the endangered species during bushfire, on ground interventions, the first one is feral animal control, and the second one is provision of extra food, shelter, and water, because we need to provide more food, shelter, and water for the endangered species, so that they won't go somewhere else and then become more endangered and then become lost in this planet. Okay, and then the fourth one is an intensive weed control program. So I think that's all. Is there any points available?
Excuse me, I have something to add on. The first is translocation, reintroduction, and replanting programs to peoples. The second is doing conservation fencing to keep the endangered species from danger during the bushfire. And lastly is providing advice and support to local wildlife carers. Thank you.
Such interesting point you have there. And thank you, Anle, Ned, Ifa, for your point of view. Now, Sophia, can you tell the fourth fact and ideas that you get from this trigger statement?
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. As for the fourth fact that we can find in the trigger, it is said that more than 10% of the area where 331 threatened and migratory species live were burned across all 6 states. That is quite a number, right? With that, animals that survived the initial bushfires will now find land that no longer has the materials that they need to survive, which is leaving them vulnerable to predators like feral cats or starvation. Add on to that, largely tree-bound species such as koalas, like Ifa said later will have had little chance to escape oncoming fire fronts. Smoke and strong winds have left many birds too confused that they couldn't find safe havens. This is really dangerous and quite threatening to the endangered species. Thank you.
So after listen to Sophia facts and ideas about this thing, I was wondering is if there anyone want to explain how to help bring the species back from the brink?
To avoid the species from extinct, we need to secure protection of critical breeding habitat. Critical breeding Critical habitat designation helps to protect areas necessary to conserve a species. Critical habitat helps to gather more detailed information about a species than what is required for listing, thereby increasing knowledge and in turn increasing effectiveness to conserve a listed species. Besides that, rapid assessment of impacts on key areas of habitat can be done. The assessment may be include data on species list, habitat types, some idea of population size, and community structure and function, species interaction, abundances and distribution patterns, and important species such as threatened, endangered, and migratory species. In wetland, information on hydrology and water quality also form part of this assessment. Next, we can assess habitat and population to determine whether the impact warrants a change of conservation status. Determining which plants, animals, and ecosystems are thriving and which are rare or declining is crucial for targeting conservation of the species, habitats, and ecosystem in greatest need. The purpose of the conservation status rank is to assess the relative risk facing a species or ecosystem and does not imply that any specific action or legal status is needed to assure its survival.
Okay. Apart from that, can I add a few more points?
Sure.
Okay. So the National Environmental Science Program, Threatened Species Recovery Hub, which is a management company in Australia, they developed a guidance to conduct the post-fire surveys to assess the habitat condition and threats. So these are all done by the Australian government. And then they emphasize on the status of threatened species and the ecological communities. So what they have done is the Wildlife and Threatened Species Bushfire Recovery Expert Panel, they did a few guidance, which is first to protect the unburned areas adjacent to the recently burned ground. So they have to check, they're going to check the unburned areas and the burned areas. And then if there is still remaining habitat in the burned area, they are going to conserve the area. And then second is they are going to protect the plant species by controlling herbivores around that area to lessen the pressure on the native species that is still alive in the area. And then next is they are going to construct new aviaries, which is a place for all the birds and mammals, reptiles, and they are going to explore all of the other options to secure a new habitat, especially on a private land or land that has not been previously habitated. And then, other than that, there's also an emergency salvage of plant and animal species for conservation or wild-to-wild translocation, which is if there are no remaining habitats, the plants and animal species are going to be moved to nearby regions for conservation. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sophia, Natalie, Corey, and Nina for your opinion. And for the last point of our trigger today, may I have Corey to give her opinion?
Okay, so the final fact that can be extracted from the trigger is the threatened species in the path of fires included 272 species of plant, 16 mammals, 9 birds, 7 reptiles, 4 insects, 4 fish, and 1 spider. So the idea behind this fact is in the state of New South Wales alone, about 800 million animals have likely been affected by the fires.
Okay, from that idea, can I ask a question? Which is, what kind of actions can be done after the bushfire?
May I answer the question? In my opinion, the actions that can be done to after the bushfire have settled are to determine which plant and animal species and ecosystem that need the help most urgently, such as the critically endangered species like the one that I mentioned before, the koalas, the kangaroos. The government need to do an intervention to keep these animals alive, and the Australia government has supplying aerial food when the animals are affected from starve. And then the next thing is that they have to have a careful management for the burn areas and protect the unburned areas from further fire and other threats by implementing a good land management law. I think that's all for me.
I want to add up on the 3 points that Ifa has been mentioned. So the fourth one is the rapid surveys to identify where populations have survived. And the fifth one is targeted control of feral predators, herbivores, and weeds. And the last one is plants or animals may need to be moved to areas where populations were reduced or wiped out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for all the opinions that you guys have given up. So, do you guys have anything to add on or emphasize before I conclude our session? No, everything is
There's no more things to add.
No.
Thank you, Stephanie.
No, Chairperson, thank you.
okay. You guys have a very great opinion. So let me conclude our session today. So to conclude our PBL session, we know that bushfire that have occurred in Australia gave a great impact to the ecosystem. So the authorities and the people have to take an early precaution and plans that we had stated in our discussion today to reduce the post impact that occur during the bushfire. So with that, we end our discussion here, and thank you for all your input.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you everyone.
Yeah, thank you.